Town Hall. Thank y'all for coming. Tonight we have with us Linda Meigs, Tim Clardy running for sheriff. Linda's running for House District 20. Tim Clardy is running for Madison County Sheriff. J.D. King is running for House District 10. And Michael Walker is running for probate judge. He'll be here shortly. We were going to have a large flag tonight, but since we don't, I'm just going to hold this one up. And if we could all stand, please, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank y'all very much. You can be seated. And tonight we have as our moderators, we have Wayman Burke, a local professor of political science and some history at Calhoun Community College, and Mike Smith, former chair of the Limestone County Democratic Executive Committee. My name is Tom Ryan. I'm the chair of the Madison County Democratic Executive Committee. The format tonight is we're going to give the candidates 90 seconds to give an opening statement, and then we're going to turn it over to Wayman and Mike, and they're going to be asking questions. So, Linda, would you want to kick it off?
Of course.
Can I say something right on beforehand? I want to encourage all of you to watch Guerrilla Politics on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock with myself and the notorious Dale Jackson as I attempt to bring sanity to an insane situation. And I know it's Sunday morning, it's something to pray about.
Channel 31, Way TV, 10 a.m.
10 a.m., 31.
Can you hear me? No. There, can you hear me?
Of course.
And I am standing up. Hi. My name is Linda Meigs, and I'd like to thank the ALCD5 for hosting this forum, and thank you all for coming. As I decided to run because I've spent most of my life right here in this community. I've been your neighbor, I've taught your kids, and I decided I wanted to be the change I want to see in the world. As a teacher, I tried to teach my French students and Spanish students that different is okay, as well as to look for commonalities and connections between people. I've also served as a leader in my church and different city and state organizations, and there I also tried to find connections. I would listen to people who had different views and work to find common ground, but stand my ground when I had to. When I decided to be the change I wanted to be, I realized that there were changes we can make for good in our state. For example, women are vastly underrepresented in the State House. There are currently 17 women in the 105-seat House. And I'm up against a man who's been there for 30 years, and I'd like to thank him for his service and wish him a happy retirement. I feel like my experience as a teacher and a leader has prepared me for this job in this moment. And I'm ready to be your voice in Montgomery. I'm Linda Meigs, and I'm running for the Alabama State House, District 20.
Okay, usually I try to actually prepare a statement for this. I'm learning to get better about that, but this week I've had something on my mind, so I'm not going to go with my prepared statement. I'm going to go with what's on my mind. So I've been participating in this whole process for quite a while, and one of the things I've noticed is with all the good people working and all the good people who are trying to do something for the people, our government and the way it's set up, whether it's you're running for the government, whether it's you're going to be voting, however you plan to participate in our democracy, it is in need of change. I am a father first and foremost in everything. I'm an engineer, and I am a native Alabamian. And I've watched Alabama, come up short so many things. And I think our government has a lot to do with that. My team, all the people who've been helping me, are, like myself, working people. They have families, they have children, they have pets, they have pre-existing conditions they're teachers who have to, buy their supplies for their students. All of these people are out here working in their everyday life to try to do something for the community. They're contributing in their everyday life to try to do something for the community. But when I look at Alabama's government, and when I talk to people about what their government has been doing over the last, forever, generally speaking, I just don't think the government is taking care of us. So that's why I'm running. I'm running because, number one, like Linda said, 2016, when I looked at my ballot and I voted, I did not have an option. I'm running to be an option, to give an option, and to ensure in the future we have options. And in order to do that, we have to structure our government such that it allows people to run. It shouldn't be this hard. It is hard, and I'm happy to do it. But it really shouldn't be this hard to just get people to get out and have their voice heard. And, it shouldn't be this hard for everyday people who are working to participate. It is incumbent upon us. I think 2018 is a crucial election. This is our election where we have a chance to ensure our democracy doesn't get taken from us. It's not taken from us now. I know a lot of people feel like that. They think it's already gone, but it's not. Your voice is still heard. All you got to do is tell your friends, as Tim said, tell everybody. You don't have to vote. I tell people, I don't care what district you're in, just go vote. I don't care who you vote for. And I know a lot of folks say, you're not supposed to say that, JB. I don't care. Go vote. Go participate in your democracy. And that is what I'm about. That's what I'm here for, and that's what I want to do. My site says I want to re-engineer our state government, and that's what I want to do. I want to go there, and I want to change the structure of it to make sure that it is built for people, and not for parties, and not for companies, and not for politics, and not for the media, but for us, for everyday people who pay taxes, who have health care, we're doing everything we're supposed to do right. The government should be doing right by us. So, I'm J.B. King. Thanks for your time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Clardy. I'm running for sheriff in Madison County. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a retired Huntsville police officer. I was with the Huntsville Police for 32 years, 6 months, and I retired. Prior to retirement, I, like everybody else that lived inside the city limits of Huntsville or in the townships of New Hope and all that, every time they needed police or any kind of law enforcement, they would, depend on the agencies of the area they lived. Well, I was the same way. Even though I worked for the police department, I lived in the city limits of Huntsville, so I had very little contact with the sheriff's department. Well, once you move out into the county, like I did 13 years ago, I started seeing how things was going. You call, you might get an answer. When you do, and as a police officer, the first thing they come to, you're a police officer, you handle it. Well, I could, but under the way things set up, they don't want you to do your policing outside of your so-called jurisdiction, but we could still handle it. But anyway, the bottom line is, if you check and see what's going on with the sheriff's department, we got federal lawsuits or federal investigation going, several sexual assault lawsuits. I'm sorry, I'm kind of tongue-tied. But anyway, the bottom line is you need to check about your sheriff's department and see that there definitely needs to be a change. My opponent, he's a former deputy, so he worked for the sheriff's department, and then he went to the DA's office, which is all pretty much close right there together in the Madison County courthouse. They work pretty much together. But anyway, the bottom line is I want to be out here to be working for you. I am a retired police officer, but as a police officer, I was always out there, the type of person that would get out here and answer your calls and talk to you, and I look eye to eye to you. And like I said before, I will not be a suit and tie, desk riding sheriff. I'm going to be a active, involved sheriff that will get out here as much as it will possibly let me. I know there's a lot of administrative work that you can't do. You can't get out because of that, but I will be out in the public as much as possible. I will be approachable. You can come up there or make an appointment or whatever. If something comes up where I'm not in the office, I will get back with you. So I need your vote, and I need you to pass the word. All the ones I've talked to who lives in other counties, tell your friends here in Madison County to vote, because even though you don't live here, you can vote for me through someone else. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate y'all allowing me to be here. Again, I'm Tim Clardy, and I'm running for sheriff in Madison County. Thank you.
First of all, I think we need to have, bring some credibility to the probate office. And I say credibility, we've never had an attorney to serve as probate judge. And it's the only judgeship in the state where you can serve as a judge without being an attorney, first of all. So I am a licensed attorney, so I will bring that to the bench as being a licensed attorney. But one of my other key issues is mental health. And I think the big problem we have now is mental health awareness. I mean, right now in Madison County, on any given day, we have 10,000 residents in Madison County on any given day who are being treated for mental health illness. And those are the ones who are being treated. But then there's probably that same number or more who have mental health issues who are not being treated, who we do not know about. So my thing as probate judge, I want to bring that awareness to the county, to wherever we need to take a strong stand on mental health. Since 2009, the state has taken away $40 million from the mental health budget. And when you take that kind of money away, and there's been no plans to put those funding back into the mental health budget. As a probate judge, I would want to come in once again, when my senators and legislators make it over here, JB and Linda, I would call them and ask them, can you get the state to somehow begin to start, I want to take away from funding and say, can you invest more in mental health? I think if we look at it as being an investment, we could probably get more support as opposed to saying funding. Because when we invest in mental health, we can reduce the prison population, we can get people back to work, we can reduce and cut back on other medical costs by having people who are getting the treatment they need to be more productive within the community. And I think that would be one of my largest things. Other thing the probate judge does also, just to throw that out here for you, is deal with the probate of wills and estates for our deceased loved ones. I also handle the adoption issues and things of that nature, also the probate court. But my main issue right now will be dealing with the mental health awareness.
Thank you, Mike. First, the legislative candidates. Both of you are facing formidable opponents, incumbents, well entrenched, I would say. I know, as you said, that Representative Sanderford has been there for 30 years. I don't know what happened to those 30 years because I remember that. Mike Ball has been there not quite that long, but he's sort of comfortable in the old box, you may say. How do you take on an incumbent that, and if you disagree with me, that's fine, who really doesn't have a lot of controversy necessarily? How do you confront an incumbent like that? Because an incumbent, even if they're a Democrat, it's tough to take them out. So I'll start with you, JD.
All right. Well, okay. So, that's a good question. And I've thought a lot about that. But the funny thing about it is the way I take it on is with irony. I find it ironic that our extremely entrenched Republican government is often on TV talking about draining the swamp. In Alabama, they are the swamp. They've been here for 30 years, for 20 years, and the results are in. And what are they really getting done? Ultimately, I looked at a U.S. News story a couple of weeks ago, and Alabama was ranked the 46th state, according to U.S. News, out of 50. And my first thought was, wow, we're not 48th or 9th. Progress, right? But are our standards that low? And if our standards are that low, who set them? The people who've been there for 20 or 30 years. So when I go and I knock on a door or I talk to somebody and I say to them, I'm running for office. And they go, why? Well, nobody's done it since 2002. He hasn't been challenged since 2002. I tell him, just like you said, he's comfortable. He doesn't have any reason to listen to you, to come out and talk to you, to knock on your door or anything. So the way I do it is for irony. They're the swamp. I let them know, hey, the swamp in Alabama is pretty red. So if you want to drain it, vote for some Democrats. Shake them up, scare them a little bit.
Okay. Thank you, JD. Linda.
Yes. I'm just going to stand. I'm used to standing. Well, when I present myself, I've knocked on over 2,200 doors now, and I am not going to likely Democrats. I'm going to, if you know anything about scoring from 0 to 100, 70 to 100 might be, from our point of view, likely Democrats. I'm going to scores of 15 to 49. And I'm not telling them I'm running as a Democrat, but if they ask me, I answer them. But I'm telling them that I've been a school teacher for 30 years. I live just right over the hill, I tell them. And I say, I'm running against a man who's been there for 30 years. That's usually enough for them. They say, wow, time for him to go. I don't have to say that. I say, I'd like to thank him for his service and wish him a happy retirement. And I say, I'm taking the high road. And they seem to appreciate that. And when I'm talking to women, I say, woman to woman, I believe we need more women's voices at the table. And they are shaking their head, yes. And then I go in, like I said earlier in my opening statement, 17 out of 105 are women, when there are 52% of Alabamians are women. That's just not right. So really, I'm just stating the facts. And that's usually enough for these likely Republicans to think it's been long enough and he should go bye-bye.
Thank you, Linda. Tim, you would be the chief law enforcement of this county, and there have been some controversies that you alluded to in your opening statement. How do you go about settling these investigations? What would you do initially when you get in office to settle these federal investigations about various violations?
Okay, first of all, you got to get in there and make sure you get all the information about what's going on. Just because they say this is happening don't mean it's 100%. But once you get in there, you find out what's going on and find out who is connected and all. Just like with the federal investigation, it has to do with the beatdown and the murders and all this stuff that's out on 53. Well, that has been pushed to the back because that happened 5 years ago. And so that's been pushed to the back. But just here recently, they've been bringing it back up, and people's finally beginning to hear about it more than before. Just like the sexual harassment cases that they have within there, I think there's 4 of them. Well, right now they're trying to get them dismissed because of the depositions, I guess they call it, is too long. Nowhere at any time they said any of it has not happened. They just saying the paperwork's too long. And then one of the attorneys has bowed out because of, I think, illness or something like that, so they're having to start all over. But the biggest thing is just getting in there and finding out what's really going on. Because you hear one thing and then next week it's a total different story.
So you're willing to get to the bottom of it?
Yes, sir. I was, like I said before, I worked for the Huntsville Police Department for 32 years. And if you was accused of something and it was enough evidence to prove that it happened, whether you did it or not, but it did occur, you got pulled from your duties and you put on administrative duties or whatever until the investigation was over. The way it's going right now, just like with the beatdown that most people know about, some don't, that deputy got to continue working up until he ended up getting, I think he took a day or 2 off, but he wasn't, my understanding, he wasn't suspended, wasn't pulled from duty or anything. And then when they finally got him for lying to the grand jury, and everything like that, that's when they actually pulled him away. But he never, really nothing happened to him until the day he quit when he got him another job at Toyota out on Pulaski Pike. And once he quit, the next day they arrested him so they could title it as a former deputy was arrested for these charges. The way I look at it, I've always said there's nothing worse than a crooked cop. I've always said that, but once I moved out in the county and started getting into all this stuff, there is one more thing, and that's a person that covers up for a crooked cop.
That's right.
And that's one thing I realize.
Tim, let me follow up with you initially here, and then we'll go back to the legislative candidates. There have been so many horrendous things in the country of police officers sometimes shooting unarmed men, often minority young men. What policies would you put into effect to encourage your people to use more discretion and good sense before pulling a weapon and firing it?
Okay, a lot of that's gonna go back to your training, and these days, I mean, you got so many people that can take the test and they can pass it. That's a badge toter. A true police officer is gonna commit to it and gonna stay with their training from start to finish. They're gonna make sure they keep up with the current training, even if it's one of the smaller departments that cannot afford to put them through so much training like the bigger departments like Huntsville and the county and all that. But the bottom line is training. And again, I got to go back to Huntsville Police because I was there all the time. We trained every year. We had in-service training every year. And I don't know of any, the whole time I was there, any years went by that we didn't practice with firearms. And again, like you said, the mental part of it. And that's the biggest thing, is you gotta have the mental state about yourself when you pull your weapon, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of police officers that go through a 25, 30-year career, never fire their weapon, and some of them can tell you that they've never even pulled their weapon, and that's great. But I'm one of the unfortunate ones over the years that I had to pull mine, and I have been in shootings. But again, it's one of the things that it's all in training, and if you get the right training, it's just like you hear everybody else say, the training keeps them. But a lot of the people don't get what they need.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
For my legislative candidates again, we'll start with Linda this time, pick up on her a bit. Alabama is, you know, I've been preaching this for years, that Alabama is one of the states that we claim we're so conservative on economic issues, among other issues, but especially economic issues. And I've often said, well, we're not practicing conservatives because we live off the federal government. You know, Huntsville is Keynesian economics on steroids. We know that and there are two budgets, the education budget and the general fund budget, and the general fund budget is the one more often underfunded. And the fact is, over the next quadrennium, there are going to be some big holes in that general fund budget. The only way we plugged it in the past few years is with the BP money, where they poison the beaches. Hopefully no one else poisons the beaches, but it might come in handy. Anyway, what do we have to do and to convince others that more revenue, whether we elect to use the T word or not, that you need more revenue to do the minimal services that the state already does? How do you convince people of that, Linda?
Well, there is a statement, of course, you get what you pay for. And so you get the services that you pay for. I don't believe I could be elected if I say we have the lowest property taxes in the nation. But it's true, because they say, oh, Meg's going to raise your taxes. You get what you pay for. But there are ways that we could perhaps be more creative, like Colorado has, in one of our recent forums, we talked about marijuana and our feelings about that. No, Alabama has a lot of farmland. And perhaps if we put it to the voters, would you like to legalize marijuana? And that would be growing it, taxing it, using it, perhaps just put it on the ballot. Is it for medicinal purposes? Is it for recreational purposes? I'm not going to decide that for the voters, but I think that's a good thing to put on the ballot, and that would bring in some more revenue. I've just been reading a booklet about policy and issues, and I hadn't finished the one on taxes. And I was talking with a young lady before the forum started tonight. It's pretty heavy about how we have the lowest property taxes. We have the most regressive sales tax. And of course, our sales tax on groceries, we're one of 3 states. How many states are there? I think there's 50, right? We're one of 3 states that has not figured out how to reduce or eliminate sales tax on groceries. And it's just a very regressive tax. If 47 states that don't even send people to the moon can figure out how to find a more fair way to tax people than on a necessity like groceries, maybe we can raise taxes on luxury items. I enjoy a glass of white wine, but it's not a necessity. So I should pay some more taxes on that, on alcohol. We have really low gas taxes, I understand. So maybe we could raise taxes on that. You're right, the T word is kind of off-putting, but again, we are the lowest in the nation. And our services are indicative of that. So I believe we need to study where our money's going and some more ways we could use it. Perhaps we could use some more creative things like windmills in our farmlands and for green energy and get some money that way.
Thank you, Linda. JB?
Okay, let's see, I'm gonna try to see if I can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just gonna talk to you. So one thing, I am glad to hear Linda bring up the option about marijuana. You know, I do think that that's something as an agricultural state.
That's right.
You know, it's a place of revenue. I've got a post coming out tomorrow. I haven't posted yet, but you know, Colorado made $250 million
That's right.
in revenue
In the
just
first
on the
year.
sale of marijuana in the first year. Now, like Linda, I understand that this is Alabama, and there are a whole bunch of people who are going to have some heartburn with that, and so we should allow the people to make the choice. You know, but I also understand that there are multiple arguments for it. You know, we can talk about soldiers and their post-traumatic stress disorders and how it helps, proven help. The VA is trying to make sure that their soldiers can get this. You know, there are a lot of reasons to do it, but in Alabama, the first and foremost reason is what you asked for, revenue. That's not taxes that somebody's going to have to pay. That's just added revenue. Along the same lines, you know, I was going to save this for later, but you know, we still don't have, and it is, and I understand that the talk of regressive taxes, right? So we still don't have a lottery here. That is another thing, that if we had a lottery here and we implement it correctly, you know, we can make sure that the education fund is bolstered. People are going to do it. A lot of folks like to say, I had a conversation today, just today at work, and one of my coworkers was saying, well, you know, if you give the money to the politicians, well, you know what they're going to do with it. Well, the guys who've been there for 30 and 20 years, we do know what they're going to do. You're right. That's why you need to elect some new people, and that's why we haven't gotten to this point yet. But we do need to start talking more about transparency. Transparency is key. Whatever we do, whatever money we bring in, whatever programs we implement, we, the Democrats who are about to take over Alabama, are going to have to in place rules and transparency and opportunities for people to go and click very easily to see, well, where is my money going? So, you know, those are two things that we can do that actually bring business to Alabama and revenue to Alabama without actually raising taxes. So that's just two, but I think there are other avenues that we can go to do that without raising taxes.
Well, let me just follow up with both of you here. Let me just throw that on the table. Casinos. I mean, Donald Trump is out of the business, but perhaps in the post-presidency, he could restart the casino empire.
So can I get that one, Linda, first?
Sure.
So I'll say this. You know, the first time I love talking to my conservative friends because they, you know, they challenge me to think about things. And the first time I talked to one of my conservative friends who was very apprehensive about the idea of a lottery, what he said to me was, well, I don't want that in my backyard. And I said to him, what, a gas station? You know, because we're not going to have to put any new infrastructure or things in place for a lottery. Now, a casino, I think, that is a much tougher sell. Honestly, I think it's probably not something we should be trying to do at this stage. We should take baby steps and let them have their tickets, and let us, all of us, have our tickets in the gas station first and see how that goes.
I misunderstood. You were saying we should have casinos.
I'm
Of course,
asking-
we have 3 casinos in the state, and we have dog races, dog tracks. And so when people say, well, you know, it's the Bible Belt, I say, Georgia, Tennessee, that's the Bible Belt.
We're
And we
holier
do
than they
have
are.
3 casinos and 2 dog tracks.
We're holier than they are.
Is that it? And I tell them 44 states have added to their educational financing with the lottery. And we are doing a really neighborly job of helping Georgians and Tennesseans with their, I use those 2 examples because from what I understand, Florida is having more issues with their lottery. But people are not, yes, we should do that. We should have that. And I said, well, my opponent voted for the voters not to have a say on that. I would like to put it on the ballot and let the voters decide.
Just a moment of personal privilege. I bear some responsibility to the Trump casinos failing in New Jersey back in the 1990s. My wife and I were there, and we won $25 off of Donald Trump and left town. And I think that was the brick that pulled out the entire casino. Anyway, we're still living off that $25. Tim, I know this is not totally in the sheriff's wheelhouse, but the sheriff's opinion on this, I think, would be important. And that is alternative sentencing, because you frequently have overcrowding at the jails and so forth for nonviolent type crimes, maybe many of them first offenders. What's your position on that, if you were encouraging the DA and the state legislators?
Okay, well, a lot of people know I've ran before for sheriff. 4 years ago, that was one of the things that I put forward, and I was saying that we need to look, if nothing else, to the ankle monitors. Anything like that would be a lot better than putting, first of all, when you got them on an ankle monitor, you're not paying their health bills. The health part of it is the most expensive part of the jail, and that's the county is paying more you know, for the health care and everything for the inmates than they actually pay for their employees. They are working at something to work on that right now, but what I was saying is that 4 years ago, that was one of the biggest things I said, that we need to start looking more into the monitoring. And my opponent at that time said it would cost too much. Well, now they're doing it. It's always, everything I brought up before, and really right now, it's always, it costs more, it costs more. I also said there was, we needed to really push for a lot of the drug enforcing out here, because if you, you know what meth smell like or anything like that, if you ride around certain areas of this county, you'll smell it. Well, they're not doing anything. A lot of people come up to me, but then on the other hand, if you get the handle of that, there's a lot of the sentencing is not going to happen, because they're going to go somewhere else, and then the other areas are going to have to worry about that. And that's, let me just tell you this, on this part, I always tell them that as far as meth users, sellers, whatever, they're all idiots. And there's some smart idiots and there's some dumb idiots. And start with the dumb idiots are the ones that get out here and do it. They get caught last week, they go right back to where they're at and get caught by the same people at the same place. The smart ones are the ones that do get it, they get caught, they get out of jail, they go to somewhere where they're not going to be caught, which is here, right here in Madison County, because you very rarely hear of anything going on here in Madison County.
We also hear that the drug cartels have moved into our area, and of course, within the past few weeks, it's a hideous murder of a child who was beheaded. I'm sure that's a go to hell offense if there is one. But the what can the sheriff do to combat that? Is the personnel there? Is the training there? Is this something that federal officials need to take the lead on? What is your position on that?
It's all there. There's personnel there that can do it. The bottom line is listening to the public. Because if the problem we're having right now is people coming up and telling the sheriff's department what's going on, and like I said about the meth stuff, they're not doing anything. You very rarely hear anything going on about the meth, and you know, right now they're saying everything about the opioids and all this and that. Yeah, we got that problem. Well, a lot of that's because of some of our greedy doctors and unethical, whatever. But the bottom line is we gotta listen to the people. If you come to me and tell me you've got a problem in your neighborhood, we need to find out if there is a problem or if it's just you. You know what I'm saying? If you think there's a problem, if there's enough there, we go look at it. But that's not happening here in Madison County. And I've said before, I will be an aggressive drug enforcing sheriff and do what you gotta do to get the problem taken care of. And the start is listening to the public.
Can I add to that?
Please address that.
So that, he brought up a point, something that I read in AL.com not too long ago. And Alabama is #1 in the nation per capita in the amount of opioids prescribed. How is it that we haven't learned where this leads in Alabama? That's one of those things where Tim on the ground as a sheriff will have to go out and do his drug enforcement. But we as legislatures should in place laws, restrictions, regulations, whatever we need to do. Transparency, which is another key on who's prescribing all these drugs, why they're prescribing all these drugs. There has to be a way to in place policies that will keep people from setting us up for failure. Because that's what that does. That is setting him up to have, when he wins, it's going to make his job harder. If we have doctors right now who are still prescribing drugs at that rate, when we know where it leads. We've seen Ohio and West Virginia and all these other places in the Midwest who are now struggling with people dying, people homeless in the street, people who the governments don't want to take care of. That's going to be more of a drain on our economy. So it has to start with us, #1, knowing and understanding and paying attention to the failures of our brother and sister states. And then bringing policies to Alabama first to fix things instead of sitting around waiting to be last on everything. And this is something we don't want to be last on. We have seen where this goes. So we need to legislate it away.
Thank you. Linda, would you like to address that as well?
What I would say is,
You can take it off.
okay.
It's just good.
Maybe I'll do, there, more than one way to skin a cat. I would say that with our age of computers, of technology, we should be able to track who is prescribing what and how much of what. A woman was just telling me she was in her doctor's office, and while the doctor was sitting there examining her and deciding which medication she should prescribe, she was looking up on her computer what other medications the patient was taking so that she could know, well, this would have a bad impact, etc. We should be able to track this. And so I agree with JV and Tim. We need to track this. We need to be, instead of being, what did I just read in that pamphlet? Instead of being tough on crime, being smart on crime. And we have too many low-level, non-violent drug offenders in jail. And we're paying over $18,000 a year per inmate, where we should be paying that for education, and then we would avoid a lot of those problems.
Michael Walker has joined us. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you.
And let me ask you this other question. We'll get to you, Michael.
Okay.
Fair time here as well. Just got this one that we have a lot more immigrants in our community than when I was a much younger person. And of course, that creates issues. What can we do to protect the dignity and the human rights of these folks, yet enforce laws that need to be enforced as well? How do we handle that delicate situation? And I'll just let each one of you address that. JD, I need to give you the honor.
All right. Are you saying D or B?
Pardon?
You're saying D or B?
B like
B.
Yeah, I know. It's JD.
Bravo.
It's bad like D.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I told Mo Brooks
I'm sure that went nowhere.
When I talked to Mo Brooks about this. Mo Brooks tried to make the point that we had 1,000 jobs lost in a certain period of time by Americans, and then 5,000 jobs gained by immigrants. And he was of the opinion that we should throw those 5,000 jobs out so 1,000 Americans can do the same job for the same money, and that was going to fix it. That somehow we were going to fill 5,000 jobs with 1,000 people who don't want to get paid that much. So after I tried to point out the fallacy in just the math and the common sense there, I also pointed out this. Those people are coming here because they want a job. They're here because somebody gave them that job. There's a need, and they're going to pick America over their homes for their opportunities no matter what. So, how do we give them dignity? By giving them a legal path.
That's right.
To come and work the job. Quite frankly, this goes right back to the initial question about revenue. If we bring in immigrants legally, and we say, I like to say it's a cover charge. If you want to pay a cover charge to get into the party, let them come in, pay a cover charge, and then sign up, be documented, and work. We used to have those migrant worker programs years ago, and they worked. But then they went away. So I think give them a legal path and let them pay a price, and give them the dignity and the rights, basic dignity, basic rights, and we get more tax revenue. It just seems to make sense to me.
You said something about Congressman Brooks's math. You do know that he has a degree in economics with honors from Duke.
Yeah.